This is a code walkthrough for the example file SelectionSwitchChars.java. This file demonstrates how to handle keyboard input using a switch statement. Since this is something we'll be doing soon, let's take a good look at this. So in this file, we're setting up a scanner for user input, and we're setting up a menu of options. So this is a multi-line string, and notice that we've got these embedded new line characters so that it's going to display exactly how it's shown here on the screen. And we have several options identified by some expected keyboard input. What we're going to do is we're going to prompt the user using this multi-line string menu, and then we're going to read one single character. Now remember, with the scan object, we can read the entire next line of data in, and that's going to be a string by itself. And then to this string, we're simply slicing off the first character to give us one single character of keyboard input. Now once we've got this single character of keyboard input, we're going to use a switch statement to handle that. But we also need to account for the fact that users might not be reading this carefully and just typing in lowercase letters. So we need to handle these characters in a case-insensitive way. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this character ch as our switch, and then we're going to have the notion of fall through here. So whether they enter a capital A or a lowercase a, the actions are the same. We're going to execute this method, execute plan A, which we'll see in a moment. If they enter a capital or lowercase b, they're going to execute this statement, capital or lowercase c, capital or lowercase q, etc. If they don't enter an A, B, C, Q of any case as expected, we're going to fall through to this default and just tell them that we've got some unrecognized character. Okay, so what we're showing here is that when we enter a character, notice that we're missing the break statement after this case uppercase A. That's because the actions would be the same in both cases. Let me put it back here so that you can see that more clearly. What we're really doing is the following: execute plan A, whoops, in both cases. But to shorten this and make it a little more compact, we're going to get rid of this duplicate code, this extra break, and this space here, and come up with this kind of switch code. This is very common in switch statements. So now that we've got our switch set up, let's scroll down here a little bit to these various methods corresponding to A, B, and C. And these are just some additional helper methods at the bottom of main, right? This is the end of the main method. This is another method within the same file called execute plan A. It takes no inputs, it returns no outputs. This is just a placeholder for some stuff we might be doing for option A. And for now, we're just going to print out some simple message until we figure out exactly what it is we need to do for plan A. Same thing here for option B. Same thing here for option C. So this is kind of an example of some stub code where we just put something to indicate that we've gotten to the right place. We'll fill in the details later on. Notice that all of these methods are private because they're only intended for the use of the above switch statement. And notice that because the main method itself is static, any methods that it calls directly must also be static. So these are also static methods. Hopefully this looks a little bit familiar from a methods assignment you wrote a little bit previously. So let's scroll back up and let's compile this as always. And we'll put a breakpoint in the margin here on main. And let's step through this a little bit. So we'll set up our scanner, and we'll set up our multi-line string. Then we'll print it out, and it'll look like this. And now it's expecting some sort of input. So let's, for example, put in, oh, I don't know, a lowercase a. Terminate it with an enter. And we'll read that in. lowercase a. We were expecting an uppercase a, but no matter. This is going to handle upper and lowercase exactly the same. So a, of course, is the first option. We're going to execute the plan A statements. So we're going to jump down to the code down here. We executed it, and now we're back to this break. We're done with the switch statement, and now we're done with the program. Let's run this again. For another option, set up the menu, print the menu, read a character. Let's say option C, capital C. Terminate it with an enter. Keep going. We're going to switch on the character uppercase C. We're going to jump right down to the first action for case C, which is this die in committee method. And we're going to do something a little different now. I'm going to click the bent arrow. So we're going to jump down to that method, and we'll see that we're going to print this placeholder print. We're done with that method. We're going to jump back to the break statement, and now we're done with case C, the switch, and the program. Let's run this one more time with some unrecognized character. I'm going to step through it, print the menu. I'm going to enter something it doesn't know. Let's put in an R. Okay, so we read in an R. We're going to switch on the R. We don't know what to do with an R. It's not A, B, C, or Q. So we're going to jump down to the default, print a message, and we're done. So this is one way to handle case insensitivity in our programs. We can put both the upper and lowercase versions of the expected keystroke in here, rely on fall through, and handle it that way. Very common. But another way of doing that, we can do the following. We can get rid of these lowercase options, like so. And then what we can do is we're going to replace our read with something like this. And what we're doing here is we're normalizing the inputs to uppercase. Now this is kind of compound dot notation. It looks kind of funny, so let's kind of walk through this here. Again, this is our scanner object. One of its methods is to read an entire line, which is a string. So this entire expression is a string. Well, one of the things we can do to a string is we can turn it to uppercase with the toUppercase method. So we're applying toUppercase to this existing string, and this itself is yet another string. Now that we've got this uppercase string, as before, we're simply slicing off the first character, char at 0, and returning it to ch. So whatever we enter is now going to be read in, uppercase or lowercase. It's going to get normalized to an uppercase character. So let's save these changes, recompile, and let's run this one more time with the debugger to prove that that's the case. We're going to print our menu. We're going to enter a character again, but now let's deliberately put in a bad character. We're expecting a capital B or a capital any character, but let's now put it in as lowercase, terminate the data entry with an enter. We'll read the character in, and notice that even though we entered the character as lowercase, it ultimately got translated to an uppercase, and now we're doing a switch based on something that's guaranteed to now be an uppercase character. So we go to case B, brainstorm some more, execute the stub code, and we're done with our program. So a couple things demonstrated in this program. Switch usage using a char, which handles keyboard input. We've also demonstrated two ways of handling case insensitivity, and we've also demonstrated that inside of these cases we can put any code we want to, including calling other methods. And also, a nice programming technique is this idea of stubbing. Just set up the structure of your code. We don't know what we're going to be doing for any of these options yet, so we'll just put a print statement in to know that we got there, and we'll flesh out the details later on. Okay, that's it for this example. Study this and make sure that this makes sense to you, because we're going to be using this in current assignments to handle keyboard input. Actually, before leaving this example, there was one more thing I wanted to do, and that was free run it a couple times. So I'm going to take the breakpoint off. I'm going to clear the window here, just recompile it for grins, and let's just run it through end to end a couple times. Option A, Option C lowercase, Option Q, and notice that because we're slicing off the first character, I can put in whatever garbage I want to, and it's still going to handle it. Okay, now that's it.